Alrighty, so I'm back on Gold Experience, and quite frankly, I didn't really expect to be here, but they just keep changing this stand, and that's part of the reason that I'm skeptical of even remaking this to begin with. And actually, that's not quite fair. I shouldn't say remaking because I'm not remaking my review. This is simply a revisit. I think I'm gonna do these when there are small changes to stands instead of large sweeping changes that change a lot about them, because really Gold Experience hasn't changed a whole lot. It's basically only had one move changed. Technically two, but the biggest one that was changed was the beatdown, which they keep changing. The beatdown was initially changed to the same amount of damage, but have less of a cooldown. Then they changed it, added some sound effects that I thoroughly enjoy. But in order to fit these sound effects in, they had to make the beatdown longer. So they kept the damage relatively the same. I actually think it was exactly the same, but they made the beatdown longer and then didn't change the cooldown at all, which meant that you could get a 14-second cooldown on your beatdown if you landed it. Basically, you could just spam beatdown over and over and over again, and your enemy just couldn't play the game. It was hilarious. Honestly, I've never been sadder that something broken got patched out so quickly. It was so funny to just beat down chain people. But that's gone, and now it's in a relatively good place, I would say. They increased the cooldown on it, so now we've got the Coolio sound effects, and it still does a good chunk of damage. Now here's the deal. The fact of the matter is that nothing has really changed with Gold Experience. I've basically already said this, and it still holds true. This stand still relies almost entirely on beatdowns. And so the biggest thing that's changed is how you land the beatdowns. During my Gold Experience review, I told you that you could zoom punch into beatdown. This is no longer the case because all of the beatdowns had their startups significantly increased to make it so that they're actually reactable and they can't combo off of that anymore. What this means is you can't just get free beatdowns off of a zoom punch. A true shame, I know. So now I hear you asking the question, but Eclipse, if I can't get it off of a zoom punch or any of the stuns, then how do I get a beatdown? And don't worry, I've got you covered. There are quite a few ways to get a beatdown. Hands down, the easiest and most reliable is off of a parry or a block break. I'm sure this goes without saying, but if you get a parry or a block break, you should use your beatdown. Not really any reason not to. But everyone already knew that, so how else do you land a beatdown? Well, the second most reliable method is forcing someone to block and then immediately using your beatdown. Because of the way parries work in this game, if you use your block, there's a short window where you can't parry anything in order to prevent you from spamming block to parry things. This means that if you see someone pull their block out, you should immediately use your beatdown. If you do this fast enough, there's no time for them to unblock and reblock and still be in the parry window. Even if they do unblock and reblock, they'll be on parry cooldown, and so you'll hit them anyway. This is the way I land most of my beatdowns nowadays. Basically, you go over and you M1 them, and they're gonna try to block your M1s 9 times out of 10, and the second that block comes up, mash your beatdown key. With that though, there's 2 other ways you can land a beatdown. Well, I guess technically 3. The next one is that you can barrage someone and then really quick use a beatdown. A lot of people like to barrage back, and so if you barrage them for like a second and then throw a beatdown back, they're gonna start barraging you back, but at that point it's too late. You'll probably only get away with this 1 or 2 times since the enemy's gonna learn that you're doing this and then just hold block when you barrage them and perfect block it, but you can catch people off guard with this the first 1 or 2 times. The next one is something I think I talked about in my Start Plat on the World review, but if you just mash your beatdown while you're in hit stun and your enemy is comboing you, 9 times out of 10 they're going to try to extend the combo and be greedy rather than try to be defensive and think that you're mashing beatdown out of stun, and so you'll end up punishing them for trying to combo you. And finally, the last one, which isn't really an option at all if I'm being honest with you, is to just try to dash and throw it out. This is how most people seem to try to use beatdowns in this game, and while the hitboxes on the beatdowns in the game tend to be larger than they should, this isn't reliable, and if you miss your beatdown, you're gonna be waiting a long time for that cooldown. So honestly, just don't do this. The other thing that was changed for Gold Experience is the frog move, and I haven't had too much of a chance to actually experiment with possibilities of using this. mostly because it doesn't work in 1v1s. But before I talk about that, I should probably tell you what it actually does. Basically, what they did with the frog move is now if you hit someone with your frog punch, the frog that falls on the ground is actually a part of your enemy's hurt box. This means that if you punch the frog, the enemy will take damage. This seems like it could have some really good uses because you could just follow the frog around M1ing it and there's not a whole lot your enemy can do about it. Like I said, I think this could have a lot of uses, but for whatever reason, a lot of moves in the 1v1s arena are just weird to function, and the frog is one of these moves. I have not one time since starting playing 1v1s have I seen the frog actually appear on the ground after I hit my opponent. I'm starting to think it just falls through the floor. In theory, you could do cool stuff like frog punch and then beat down the frog punch to get a free beatdown, but you can't really do that in 1v1s because there's no frog to beat down, or hit at all for that matter. This is something that I don't see getting fixed because a lot of moves are bugged like this. I think it has something to do with the grass in the arena, but sometimes you can't use your tree or bird for GE and GER. Sometimes you can't use the wall for Crazy Diamond. I don't know, it's some weird thing with the terrain. I'm not sure what causes it, but it's kind of a pain. Long story short, the frog move has not changed whatsoever in 1v1s. But purely off of theory, I would say if you land a frog punch nowadays, your best bet is probably to either M1 it or use your beatdown to get a free beatdown. Because either way, I would very heavily wager that your opponent's probably going to be confused since basically no one plays Gold Experience, and they probably don't even know what this move does. Now that you do, honestly, you're a cut above the rest if you're trying to use GE, and if you're not, well, maybe you can learn a thing or two, and then you won't get screwed by this. So I guess the last thing I should probably cover is, has my opinion on Gold Experience changed since the buffs? Because they are buffs. And I've had a lot of people asking me this, and I would have told you that GE was a lot better when the beatdown cooldown was broken. But now, I think GE is fine. I don't think it's changed a whole lot since the last time I did a review on it, and that's part of the reason that I'm doing a revisit rather than a straight re-review. I just don't see a reason to do a whole re-review on this stand, considering that such a little amount of things got changed. If they had done a full rework, then that would make sense. But they don't have to do a full rework, because the stand, frankly, is already fine. I think I was probably a little too hard on it in my review, because I think Gold Experience falls into almost the same category as Star Platinum, where it's alright and it's not totally broken, but I think it's relatively fair. I mean, honestly, I do quite well with it. As long as you play your cards correctly, make sure you're using your heals when you have them, and just keeping yourself in the fight while your enemy slowly chips away, you'll win a lot. While I was playing, I even managed to beat a leaderboard ranked 30-something, but that was before the beatdown got nerfed, so you couldn't just beat down every 14 seconds, so I don't really know if I'd be able to do that again. All in all, Gold Experience is fun to play, and I think that might just be the sound effects talking, because I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, but it really is enjoyable, and I have a lot of fun using it now. So while it might not be massively OP or a meta stand by any rights, as long as it's fun to play, I don't think it matters too much. That's good enough for me. With that being said, I'm wrapping up here. So have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.